Alright, today we're going to make homemade macaroni and cheese. So you're going to need to have a pot of water on. Okay, we're going to get that boiling. And then in a separate pot, we're going to make a bechamel. So the bechamel is what our sauce is going to be based from. In order to make a bechamel, you're going to use butter and flour and then milk. So in this case, we're going to use a half a cup of butter and a half a cup of flour and 3 cups of milk. And then we'll add to it 8 ounces of cheese. I use mild cheddar cheese. Maybe we'll add a little bit of Parmesan if we want to. And then that's it. It's not that complicated. True bechamel would usually have nutmeg in it, but when we make macaroni and cheese, we usually keep that out. So it's going to be a bechamel when we put the butter, flour to make a roux, and then we're going to add milk. That's going to make it a bechamel. And then it's going to be a Mornay once we add the cheese. So it's going to go through a phase of things. Okay? It's not that long of a recipe, pretty easy. And there's 2 ways to do it. You could either just make the sauce and then add it to the macaroni, or you could bake it. I like it better baked a little bit. 25-30 minutes, we'll bake it, and at 350 degrees. And then in that case, we'll use all the sauce. If you're not going to bake it, then you could probably go half recipe on the bechamel. So you also want to get your your oven heated up too. All right, so we're going to have our butter. We're going to wait till that melts. Then we're going to whisk in half of a cup of flour. So we're kind of learning a couple different things. We're learning how to make a roux. And like I said, we're learning how to make a bechamel. And then we're taking a bechamel, adding cheese, and making it a Mornay. So bechamel, a roux would be 1 part fat and 1 part flour. So you could use a roux to thicken. You could use a roux to make a base for gravy. You could use it to thicken like a soup, a stew, or chowder. If you can't have flour, you could use cornstarch. You could use a cornstarch slurry instead to thicken things. But it's pretty hard to make macaroni and cheese that way. So if I had to make a substitution here, because I couldn't have flour, I would have to get something very, very close to that, because really can't. There's not much we could do with this mac and cheese base besides not make it. The other thing we have is a tablespoon of salt. It's going to seem like that's a lot, but we have to season all. We have a pound of pasta that we're going to have, so we have to season all that, and for some people that might not even be enough. So we're whisking it, and see that's combined right there. We're going to cook out the flour a little bit. I'm going to turn down the heat just a touch. If we were cooking Louisiana food, Cajun food, we would probably use oil and flour. That would be our fat. Oil would be our fat. And in this case, it lets us cook it to a lot higher heat. And then we'll make what they call a brown roux. So your base for gumbo and stuff like that will have a brown roux. In this case here, we keep it a lighter color like that. It's like a tan color. We don't want to cook it to brown. You could also take roux and you could freeze it. So you could put it in little ice trays and then just use it as you need it to thicken things. So what you want to do is you want to have hot roux and cold milk, or cold roux and hot milk. You don't want to usually have hot roux and hot milk. It combines a lot better, thickens a lot quicker this way. So I'm going to go with 3 cups. I want to make sure that I don't have any lumps in what I'm making too. So I'm going to go ahead and add it a little bit at a time and whisk it through. And it starts off very, very thick, and it'll get thin, and you'll think, oh, wow, I just put too much milk. This is never gonna work. We're gonna turn the heat back up a little bit. Be careful, because we have milk in the pan. So, milk in the pot. So it will scald and burn to the bottom. So you're gonna have to stir it every once in a while. This is gonna take a few minutes. It's gonna all of a sudden get thick. We'll see it go from nice and thin like this to within 10 minutes or so, it will be super thick. So we're gonna let that work. I'll actually just keep it on camera so you could see the process that it goes through. The roux has to have time to activate. One thing with cornstarch that's nice, if you do a cornstarch slurry, it doesn't need the heat or the time to activate. It will thicken quickly. It almost makes like a gelatin. Roux takes a little bit of time. So in the meantime, I'm going to use large elbows. You can use whatever shape you want of noodle. I'm trying to do something a little different, so I'm going with large. But rotini, ziti, rigatoni. I've seen people make macaroni and cheese with spaghetti. Put whatever kind of noodle you want. Shells. So again, we started with equal parts of flour, equal parts fat. Our fat in this case was butter. Yes, it could be oil. Then we added milk to it. And that's going to thicken this whole thing. And I'm whisking it, like I said, to keep it off the bottom of the pan. I don't want to burn what's at the bottom. I need the heat to be about medium because I want it to activate that roux and get it to thicken up. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for that to work, you could get yourself set up with your pan for baking this. So if you want to bake your macaroni and cheese, like I said, or you could just dump the sauce right in there and have it like that. If you're going to bake it, I would recommend cooking the pasta al dente and then adding the sauce, and it's going to suck up that sauce. It's going to absorb it. Makes it a little bit more fluffy too. So if you're a fan of Southern style, you know, macaroni and cheese, usually it's baked in the oven. If you're a fan of like Velveeta, then I would say you want to pour the liquid just on the pasta and have it that way. If you haven't had it baked, I recommend trying it. And you can always put a little cheese on the top too. This is a good chance to go through your refrigerator too and get whatever else you have in there that needs to get used. So I have some white American cheese, I'll put that in there with it. Why not? You can make it with other types, like I said, it doesn't have to be cheddar. Mornay is usually Gruyere. So alright, so make sure that you can see this, but it's already feeling thicker to stir. We see it's starting to have a little bit happening here. If I wish that I could actually show you in person. You could like be sitting here watching this. But this camera's as close as we're gonna get, but see it's starting to stick to the spatula, to the whisk a little bit more. On my finger. Yep. Show you another trick. Like what we do with chowder. We could draw a line through it. right? Then it's thickened up to where we want it. So that's right there. See? Okay, so that's done. That took us about, what, 8 minutes or so? It's gonna depend on the heat of the stove, right? Everything's dependent on how you're cooking it. And I'll add my cheese right into that. I'll leave a little bit at the end for going on top. And then I'll add this American cheese I have left over. And we're gonna mix this up. You could add chili seasoning too, to make like a taco dip. You could add jalapenos and make this like a cheese dip like you get at some of these places around town. So this is the base for doing that. And I have the heat off. I don't want to burn this. I just want to melt the cheese in there, get it all uniform. See that? That's what we want. Give you a nice close up. See how that sauce is nice and smooth? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to boil the noodles up, which we're still waiting for our water. It's almost ready to go. There's little bubbles in there we can see, maybe 2 minutes out. So I'll go ahead and boil this pasta, and then I'll show you the mix and where we're at before we put it into the oven. All right, so just giving you another example, kind of another opportunity to see. We're like higher than simmer right now, so it's not quite to what we call a boil. It's almost at a rolling boil. Starting to see the steam come through, and now it's starting to come down on the side. So once it gets a little bit past that, that's when we'll add the pasta in. So don't add pasta in before the water is boiling. It's not like rice where you get away with that. You want to make sure it comes to a boil. And then check the box. The box will usually tell you a certain amount of time, depending on the thickness of the pasta. So in this case, we're making large elbows, so it's between 8 or 10 minutes. We're going to test it. We pull it out, and it has a little bit of bite to it. You know, a little bit of chew. That's al dente. That's what I'm going to go with, because like I said, we're going to bake it, so I want it to absorb. I have all this sauce that's going to go inside all that pasta right there. So we're going to give it that extra time. The other thing we're going to do is give this a stir so it doesn't stick when you first put it in. If you have a pot and it's a little bit shorter and you don't quite have enough room and it tends to want to boil over, you could throw a little bit of oil on top, and that'll reduce the surface tension of the water and keep it from boiling over. Sometimes you'll see people do this too, where if it hits here, it breaks, it comes back down. Usually they'll put a spoon across it. So anyway, there's a couple tricks. We're gonna wait till these are boiled, and then we'll show you when it's done. We'll go ahead and put everything together. All right, so we're coming up on the end of our pasta cooking here. Taste the piece. My mom used to say, who wants to be the tester? That's good. So that was about 8 minutes. Now we're going to set up over here to put this all together. And dump it out. I'll be right back. I have a baking pan here. I get all those noodles in there. Our oven is 350. You can go slightly higher if you want. It's gonna look like you have a lot of sauce, but like I said, it's gonna get absorbed in this. I'm just gonna stir it in. Make sure you get all the pasta coated. Oops. Probably do, since this is going to be, pan here is kind of big, it's going to cook fast, so maybe 20 minutes or so. Check it. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and pause this and I'll show you when it comes out of the oven. Alright, so it's been about 25 minutes. There you go. That's it. Right there. Boom. Southern style mac and cheese. I hope you guys enjoy the recipe.